The first call came at 2:14 a.m. I didn't answer. My phone kept vibrating on the nightstand like a trapped insect, lighting the ceiling in pulses. My father's name flashed across the screen, formal, unsoftened even now. Senator, not Dad. Like, comment, and subscribe Huna Stories for more stories. I let it ring until silence filled the room again. Beside me, my husband slept. One grease-stained hand curled against the white sheets we'd splurged on because we could finally afford something unnecessary. Outside, rain tapped the window with patient persistence, like it knew I wasn't done yet. They were calling because they had opened the envelope, and once you see the truth laid out cleanly, there's no way to fold it back up. They didn't come to my wedding. That part still stings more than I admit. The ceremony was small, 30 chairs and a converted warehouse that smelled faintly of paint and old wood. Strings of warm lights, wildflowers in mismatched jars. Nothing political, nothing impressive. My father sent a brief text the morning of. Scheduling conflict, you understand. My mother called long enough to say, "This impulsive decision will ruin us," like my happiness was a public scandal waiting to break. I wore my grandmother's dress anyway. My husband, then my fiancé, had fixed the broken clasp with steady hands and a patience I wasn't used to receiving. He looked at me like I was enough without credentials, without optics. That was his crime. Like, comment, and subscribe Huna Stories for more stories. Growing up, love in our house came with conditions. Excellence was mandatory. Obedience was survival. I learned early how to listen without speaking, how to smile without agreeing, how to file away details that didn't belong to me yet. They thought I was naive. That was their first mistake. The doubts didn't come all at once. They arrived quietly, like drafts under a closed door. A campaign donor who hugged me too tightly at a fundraiser years ago, then disappeared from public records. A shell nonprofit I recognized from a college internship suddenly resurfacing with my mother's maiden name attached. Conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, laughter that felt rehearsed. And then there was the prenuptial request, not from my husband, from my parents. They framed it as concern, protection, legacy. My father's voice was smooth, practiced. My mother's eyes were sharp, calculating. They wanted access to my future, to what they assumed would be his nothing. I smiled. I agreed. I listened. Silence has always been my strongest weapon. The truth surfaced on a Tuesday afternoon in a courthouse basement that smelled like mildew and old paper. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to pull that file, but I did. The numbers lined up too neatly. Campaign funds rerouted, donations laundered through charities meant for vocational schools, mechanic schools. The irony burned. My husband's former employer's name appeared 3 times, his signature badly forged once. They weren't just ashamed of him, they were using him, using me. I sat on the cold floor between filing cabinets and laughed once, sharp and humorless. Then I stopped, because grief deserves quiet. That was the moment something inside me hardened into clarity. They had underestimated what I inherited from them. I didn't confront them. I collected documents, recordings, timelines. I learned which assistants talked too much after wine, which rivals hated my father enough to listen, which laws bent under pressure, and which snapped cleanly. My husband noticed the late nights, the way I stopped flinching at my phone. He didn't ask questions. He trusted me. That trust became sacred. I moved money, established contingencies, filed paperwork under my married name, untraceable to them until it was too late. The silence stretched. They mistook it for compliance. I mistook it for peace. The envelope arrived at their townhouse on a Friday. Cream paper, unmarked, heavy. Inside, copies of everything, annotated, highlighted, indexed. A letter on top, handwritten. You taught me to think ahead. You taught me not to waste leverage. Consider this gratitude. By Sunday, the calls started. Voicemails cracked with urgency. My mother cried, real tears this time. My father's voice dropped the senator's cadence and found something raw underneath. They wanted to meet. I declined. Power doesn't need proximity. When the investigation became public, they tried to spin it, blame aides, distance themselves, but the paper trail was meticulous, unforgiving. My husband watched the press conference in silence, grease still under his nails. When it ended, he looked at me, not surprised, just proud. That was the moment justice felt complete. The calls stopped eventually. Resignations followed. Then silence. True silence. Not the kind I grew up with. Sometimes I think about the wedding, about the empty seats in the front row, about how they thought absence was punishment. They were wrong. Absence was freedom. Tonight, the rain has stopped. My phone is still. The envelope sits empty in a drawer, its purpose fulfilled. I lie awake beside the man they thought was beneath me, breathing in the steady proof of a life I chose. They said my decision would ruin us. They were right, just not the way they thought. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe Huna Stories for more stories.